All right, guys, welcome to the section 3.5 notes. We're going to get started here. So yesterday you should have done some stuff regarding slopes of parallel and perpendicular lines, whether or not they have equivalent slopes or negative reciprocals for their slopes. Our warm-up for 3.5 today is write an equation of a line in slope-intercept form given the two pieces of information. So slope-intercept form, just to reiterate, is y equals mx plus b. Okay, so if we have an m here and a b here, we're going to say this is y is equal to, instead of m, we're going to say 3x, and instead of b, it's going to be plus 2. Okay, so there's your first one. And again, if you guys want to pause these, try them on your own first. That's totally up to you. Otherwise, you can just follow along and watch here. And in example 2, you should get y is negative 2x plus 4. Again, this is just a review going back to algebra because we are going to be talking about slopes of lines here moving forward. Okay, and question 3, write an equation in point-slope form that has the given slope and point. So if you guys remember, point-slope form is y minus y1 is equal to m times the quantity of x minus x1. Okay, so we have our slope of m and our point of 2, 4. So this is going to be y minus 4 is equal to 2 times x minus 2. Again, just writing them in this form. We're not simplifying. We're not doing anything. It's just remembering what the forms of these equations actually are. All right. So in section 3.5, we're going to go back to writing and graphing equations for lines. All right. Our learning target, or I can write and graph equations of lines. You should all already be proficient, if not advanced at this, you guys. Okay. So again, this is looking at those standard E ICANs in determining if lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither, and also being able to write equations for those lines. Okay, so this is going back to some graphing stuff. We already know the answer to slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. Okay, the goes through the the b goes through the y-intercept, which is where it crosses the y-axis, and then the m is the slope. Okay, point-slope form, if you guys remember, and we just went over on that last slide, is y minus y1 is equal to the slope of m times the quantity of x minus x1. So this is basically the other form of the equation you can write them in if you don't have the y-intercept, which is fine, because as long as you have the slope, you can write an equation in point-slope form. And more often than not, it's almost more work at times to write it in slope-intercept form, so we can always default to point-slope form. So that's your choice. Okay, let's get started here. So write an equation of a line that passes through the given point and has the given slope. Now notice it says point-slope form, but again, given what we have, we are already going to be writing it in point-slope because we don't have the y-intercept, because none of these points for 15 or 17 have a y-intercept point given. So we know m is negative 4/7. So we have our x1 and our y1 here. So let's start by saying y minus negative 3. But you guys also know that that just means y plus 3. Okay? And that is going to be negative 4/7 times x minus 7. All right? Why don't you pause right now and try number 17 on your own. Once you finish that, start that back up. Okay, if you pause, you should be checking your answer now. So this is going to be y plus 5 is equal to negative 1/3 times x minus 9. Okay, again, quick review on how to write equations of lines in point-slope form given a point and a slope. Okay, so if you need to go back and rewatch that really quick, if you need to go back to the slide that has the formulas on it, it's right here. Again, it's point-slope form. Okay, we are going to move on. So write an equation of a line with a slope of 3/2 and goes through the point 2, 3 in slope-intercept form. So now this is being able to use point-slope form to get slope intercept form, okay? So we're going to start by writing it in point-slope form. So it's going to be y minus 3 is equal to 3 halves times x minus 2. Now, to get it to slope-intercept form, okay, we need to solve it for which variable? The y. So we're going to have to get y by itself. But before we do that, we're going to have to distribute the slope to both of these values. All right, so we're going to get y minus 3. That part will not change yet. So this still is going to be 3 halves x. Nothing changes here. But when we do 3 halves times negative 2, we can write that over 1. Okay, notice we can cross cancel this out, make this a little bit simpler. So now we only have 3 times negative 1. So this becomes minus 3. And then to get y by itself, the last thing we will do is add 3 to both sides. And we will get y is equal to 3 halves x. And negative 3 plus 3, as you guys know, is equal to 0. So this is going to be your equation in slope-intercept form with the b value equaling 0. Okay? Again, this should not be new for a lot of you, as we did a lot of this in Algebra 1. But it is a standard that is assessed in Geometry A, and we are going to continue to go over this just so we're hitting the standards that you guys are going to need. Okay? Now we're going to look at a graph. It says use the graph to write an equation of a line. Notice it does not say which form you have to write it in. Okay? If it doesn't say, all you got to do is figure out, okay, well what form can I write this in? Okay? So, or what would be the most efficient form, I guess. And looking at this right now, I can't really tell if I have a y-intercept that's nice and neat. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 to find the slope. Okay, so I'm just going to start with negative 1 plus 4. Okay, I'm just using those 2 points. And then 3 plus 4 as well. All right, so if I simplify that, I should get 3 over 7. Okay, 3 over 7. So that's going to be my slope. Now I got to figure out which form. And right now I do not have a very clear-cut y-intercept. So I'm going to use point-slope form. I'm going to use this point right here. Okay, so I'm going to do y plus 1 is equal to 3/7 times the quantity of x minus 3. Or, if you picked this point, you could have done y plus 4 is equal to 3/7 times x plus 4. Either one, as you guys remember, is an appropriate response and answer for those 2 points. All right, again, hopefully this is a lot of just review and you're like, oh, I already know how to do this, Mr. Gibson. You guys got this, okay? Now we're looking at a little bit more of an application. So this would be more of like a advanced type of problem you would see in an assessment. We're not going to be doing a ton of assessments, but we will be doing a lot of the homework that goes with it just to see that you guys are still keeping up with that. Okay, so the cost of admission to an amusement park is $175 for season pass or $35 per visit. Write an equation to model each situation. Okay, so what we could say is if you get a season pass or you just pay per visit. All right, so this means we're going to have 2 equations. All right, now one of them is going to be the same every time you visit, right? Whether it's you have not visited yet, you visited 40,000 times. Okay, so that first one we're going to start by saying is $175 for season pass. So that means no matter how many visits you go, it'll always be a total cost and you will never pay any more or any less than $175 for the season. Okay, so our first equation is going to be y equals 175. Okay, it means that we're never going to charge any more or any less for that pass because it's always going to just be the same. Now, the other one, there is a variable that's factored in here. We have to figure out, okay, well, if I want to pay per visit, that means I don't know how many visits, so I have to use a second variable. So this is going to be y equals, and since it's $35 per visit, we're going to say that per visit, so this is going to represent x, okay? So if it's $35 per visit, we're going to say it's 35x And since if you don't go, that's obviously not going to get charged, then we're just going to say this is y equals 35x. So that's where those two equations come from. Okay? So this is for the season pass. And then this is going to be for your per visit. Now, part B, it says graph each of the equations, okay? So for the first one, the first equation, I'm going to do this in red, okay? So we're going to do that in red. The first equation, no matter what, guys, it's always going to cross through at 175. No matter how many times you go, that's the price that you paid at the beginning of the season. So that's what it's going to cost you for the whole season. Now, in this case, for the per visit, it's going to be a situation where if you don't go, you're not going to get charged. All right? So if it's $35 per visit, I know that if I don't go at all, it's going to cost me $0. Okay? Now I'm trying to see if I can figure out a really good spot here in terms of where we can plot our next point, because as you can see, the increments go up by 25, excuse me, on the y-axis in cost when we want to find a nice neat point for what it would cost to do a nice neat point, so that way we're not kind of guessing on the graph, okay? So if I know that if I go 10 times, okay, if I go 10 times, that's going to cost me $350, okay? But my graph only goes to 7, as far as I can see. It actually goes to 8 visits on the x-axis. So if I cut that in half, I know that half of 350 is 175. So 5 visits, I know is going to cost me $175. So if I do that, now I have a nice neat point to go through. Okay, I can now graph my equations of my lines. And then part C, coincidentally enough, asks us what is the breaking point or break-even point, which means when is my season pass basically making its money? Like when have I gone enough times to where I have made my my investment actually worthwhile here? Because as you can see, if you pay per visit, you're going to be paying a lot more money throughout the season than if you just pay $175 right away and you go until you reach the same number of visits. So in this case, the break-even point is going to be right here. So at 5 visits. So at 5 visits, that is our break-even point. What does the slope and the y-intercept mean in this situation? Well, the slope, as you guys know, is the cost per visit. Okay? So in the graph for the season pass, it's only going to be, it doesn't cost me anything per visit, does it? Right, because I mean, if you think about it, I'm not paying every time I go. That's why it's a flat rate. I've only paid one specific amount, okay? That's why my slope is 0. I don't need to write it in the equation, but my y-intercept is actually 175. So in this case, the y-intercept represents how much money you paid at the beginning of the season. So in this example, if you paid $175 for that season pass, you're good for the rest of the summer. You don't have to pay, the rest of the season, you don't have to pay any more because you have already paid your initial fee. Now, if you pay per visit, you do not have to pay an initial fee at the beginning, so you only pay for what you go. But if you continue to go more than 5 times, you're actually paying more than you would if you had just bought the season pass at the beginning. So the slope represents the cost per visit, and the y-intercept represents the amount you paid at the beginning of the season to go to the amusement park, depending on what option you chose. Okay? Does that make sense? Hopefully that does. If not, go back, rewatch, send emails if you are unclear. Okay? Now, we're going to continue here with some more examples. I just want to see how much we have left here. Okay, looks like we have quite a bit. So this is actually the point where I want you guys to stop if you would like. And you can watch the rest of it tomorrow. Okay, I believe we have the second part coming up here. And this is actually our warm-up for the second day. So if you actually want to stop and do that, otherwise we're going to pick up right where we left off here and finish up the second half, the second portion. This will relate more to the second day's worth of homework. If you want to watch the whole thing, feel free, but right now we are going to get started here on 3.5 day 2. Okay, so in here it says find the slope. If you want to pause and do these on your own, please do so. It says then determine if lines are parallel or perpendicular in either and explain your answer. So right now we have 3 equations. A is in standard form, B is in point slope, and C is in slope intercept form. All right, so in order to get my equations so I can compare slopes, I need to have them all in a slope or point slope form, or slope intercept form, excuse me. So I'm going to get the y by itself here by starting to subtract an x, 6x on both sides. I have negative 10y is equal to negative 6x minus 2 divided by negative 10 on both sides. Okay, so y is going to equal positive 3/5 x plus 1/5. Okay, again, I'm simplifying a lot of these a lot quicker than maybe you are unsure of, but if we are paying attention here, you should know and simplify it correctly that it is going from 6 over 10 does simplify to 3/5, and 2 over 10 simplifies to 1/5. Okay, so the slope of A is positive 3/5. The slope for B is negative 3/5, and the slope for C is negative 5/3. All right, so if we look, line A and line B, are these parallel or perpendicular? In this case, they are neither. Okay, neither of those lines are parallel nor perpendicular. They are not negative reciprocals, and they are not the same. One's positive and one's negative. Lines A and C, if you notice, those actually are perpendicular. Perpendicular. Okay, so we've got 3/5. If I were to flip that, I'd get 5/3. And then if I took the reciprocal, the negative reciprocal, excuse me, that would make it negative 5/3. And then if I look at B and C here, they are not the same, nor are they negative reciprocals. So these are neither as well. All right, so no parallel lines in this example. But as long as you were paying attention, following along here with the slope and going back to what we did in 3.4, this should have been no problem, okay? So second part of 3.5 is continuing on with graphing and writing equations of lines that have parallel and perpendicular slopes, okay? What do we know about the slopes? Again, I'm sounding repetitive, but we know that slopes of parallel lines are the same, and we know that perpendicular lines are negative reciprocals. So we got slopes that are the same, and we have negative reciprocals. All right, so that's our quick review there. Again, we've gone over this a few times already, so you guys should be good. It says write an equation of lines that passes through negative 2, 3, and is parallel to the line y minus 2 equals negative 4 times the quantity of x plus 2. So this is going back to stuff that we did, guys, back in Algebra 1A here, okay? So in order to write a line, now notice, guys, it does not say what type of equation you need to write. So if you want to write it in point slope form, please do so. Just understand that you have that discretion. I'm not going to mark it right or wrong, and honestly, I would expect you to do it in a more efficient way than the longer way by doing it in slope intercept form versus point slope form. So if you just want to use point slope form, guys, go for it. That's what I'm going to write your answers in on these videos here. If you want to try standard form, you're going to have to just double check and make sure that you are at least getting the point slope form correct, okay? So a line that is parallel to this equation through this point, okay? So if it's parallel, we need to have a slope that is equivalent to the same slope that's in this line. So we have m equals negative 4. So if we know that we need to have the same slope, I don't really have to do anything here, guys. All I have to do is just plug in my new numbers, okay? So instead of negative 2 or y minus 2, I'm going to have my new point. So it's going to be y minus 3 is equal to negative 4, still same slope, and then x plus 2, okay? And from that, that's really all you need to do. I mean, it's a relatively straightforward question here when we're talking about writing equations. As long as you're using point slope form, it does go quite quick, okay? To move on here, write an equation of lines that passes through negative 2, 3, that is perpendicular. Okay? One extra step here, we just have to make sure that we find that negative reciprocal, okay? So the negative reciprocal is going to be the reciprocal of -4/1, so this is going to be 1/4. And since it started negative, it's going to stay positive here. So we are going to plug in that point again. So y minus 3 is equal to 1/4 now as our slope, x plus 2. All right, we're done with that one. Okay? Again, if you need to go back and double check those, watch them again and make sure you did them correctly, check for errors. We should be good to go. Otherwise, we are going to move on here. It says, write an equation that is parallel to the line y equals 4 and goes through the point 3, 5. Okay, so write an equation that is parallel to the line y equals 4 and goes through the point 3, 5. So guys, right now what we're saying is we have a line that's a horizontal line. So y is equal to 4. So that means I have a line that is going to be going through right here. So that's my original. So I want to write one that is parallel to y equals 4. So I know that I have lines that are parallel. They have to have the same slope. So I need to draw basically another horizontal line. So the point 3, 5 is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right here. So we know that we have to have the line goes through that point. Since it's horizontal, the slope needs to also be 0. Okay, so my horizontal line is actually going to be y equals 5 because it has to go through. Oops, that's a horrible line. I'm sure Reese is loving that line right now. Yeah, shout out to Reese. Okay, that's the best that I can do here for your line in terms of a parallel one. But you guys see what I'm talking about here? Just recognizing the types of lines that you have. You just put them on the graph where you got them. All right? Now, if we are doing one that is perpendicular, let's scroll down here. I'm going to add another graph while we've got it. My content, pictures, boom. Mine's bigger, okay? So if we are doing the same line, so again, initially, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is our initial line, okay? 3, 5 is still going to be in the same spot, so we have 3, 5. We're going to make the one that's perpendicular, okay? You guys know that a perpendicular line to a horizontal line must be a vertical line. Very good. So it's going to go through right there, and that's going to give us our line. So then our perpendicular line to that is actually going to be x equals 3, okay? Because vertical lines are written in the form of x equals whatever point it goes through. So the x value will always be 3 through this one, all right? If there's any questions, again, go back. This is, again, I'm going through it, guys, quickly enough to where if you remember this stuff from Algebra 1, this should not be that big of an issue, okay? Again, all vertical lines are written in the form x equals, and then whatever it's going through, and horizontal are y equals, all right? So, next slide here. Write an equation of a line that is parallel to y equals 5x plus 2 and goes through the points 2, 3. Why don't you guys try this one on your own, pause the video, and then come back here and see what you get, all right? So if you pause, we're going to go over the answer now. So parallel, again, we want the same slope. So here is our slope for that first line. M is going to be 5. Notice it does not say what equation that we need to write it in, so I'm just going to use point slope form. So y minus 3 is equal to 5 times x minus 2. Done and done. Nice, painless equation here. Now if we go down, as you guys know, we're probably going to do one now that's perpendicular. Okay, so if m is 3, my new slope, so the negative reciprocal, is going to be negative 1/3. So I'm going to be using y plus 2 is equal to negative 1/3 times x minus 6. Done and done there. Okay, hopefully you guys aren't, I'm not going too fast. Hopefully you're able to recognize some of this stuff and remember it. Oh yeah, that's good. If you need to go back and rewatch, if it helps you, please do that, all right? Don't hesitate to go back and pause. It's all right. You've got plenty of time this week to figure this out, okay? Now, if you guys remember, okay, we talked about some midpoint stuff earlier in the year, okay? Midpoint formula, you guys should remember that, okay? It says find the midpoint of PQ, then write an equation of lines that passes through the midpoint and is perpendicular to PQ. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here, okay? So it says find the midpoint. So if you guys remember what the midpoint formula is, okay, and the midpoint formula is x1 plus x2 divided by 2, and y1 plus y2 divided by 2, okay? So that is part A, okay? Part B, it says then write an equation of lines that pass through the midpoint and is perpendicular to PQ. So we're going to not only find the midpoint of PQ, we're going to find the slope of PQ, and then we're going to write an equation that is perpendicular using the slope from PQ. So let's start by finding the midpoint. All right, so we're going to start, this is part A. So this is finding the midpoint. So we've got x1, y1, x2, y2. All right, so we're going to add up those points and we're going to divide them by 2. So we've got negative 4 plus 4 divided by 2, and 3 plus 1 divided by 2. All right, if we simplify these guys, we should get 0 over 2, comma 4 over 2. All right, and that's going to give me 0, comma 2. So there's your midpoint. So that's part A. So that's reviewing our stuff from part A. Now, we're going to go to B. So we know that our midpoint is the point that it goes through. All right, but we need to find the slope first. So to do that, we're going to do m is equal to 1 minus 3 over 4 plus 4. So that is negative 2 over 8, which equals negative 1/4. Now, if you're wondering how I got those points, again, guys, we're just using these points here from the first one to try and get that figured out for our slope. Now that we have our slope, we're going to write a line that is perpendicular. Okay, so we're going to use the negative reciprocal of this slope. Okay, so if we start here, so now I'm going to write in a different color. So our negative reciprocal is going to be 4. And then we're going to use this point to write it through. So we're going to write an equation through 0, comma 2. So if I use that point, that would be, I'm going to use y-intercept, or slope-intercept form here, guys, because I do have the intercept. So it's going to be y equals, my slope is 4x, and since I have my y-intercept, that's plus 2. So if you did that correctly, and you made sense of what we did, I know we went through kind of fast, okay? That's another example, but I think that's enough for right now. You should have been able to figure that out just by following along, but if you need to go back, please, please, please watch it again. But basically, guys, we broke it down into parts. We found the midpoint, we found the slope, and we wrote an equation that is perpendicular using the fact that we find the negative reciprocal, and we do that. Okay. Are there any questions here? If there are, please email me. Hopefully this made enough sense. We're not going to spend any time going over this stuff. If you guys want to try these on your own, feel free. I want to make sure that you guys are able to get going here on this homework assignment. Again, if you broke it up into 2 days, this is now the second day, and I would like you to do the second set of homework from the book. If you don't have your book, again, don't worry. I will send you some stuff through Khan Academy. Again, it won't be any extra or any less or any more. It'll be just enough to where you're getting those extra little bits of practice here. No more than we would normally have throughout the classroom, okay? Again, I miss you guys. Hopefully you guys are all staying safe and staying healthy at home. If you guys need anything, as you guys probably know, please feel free to reach out, okay? Hope you guys have a great rest of your day.